Have you ever wanted to help someone even though they didn't explicitly ask you to? And how did it go? And have you ever wondered if your good intentions could, in fact, have caused a negative ripple effect that you weren't aware of? In the Zen story you are about to hear, we will see that not helping others, unless they ask you, is best for them and for yourself. So stay until the end, because what you discover thanks to Buddhist wisdom could change the way you see the world of human relationships. In essence, you will see how helping those who do not want to be helped can have negative repercussions on your life and theirs, and you will discover how your karma will be affected. But before continuing, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share the video. These small gestures will help us produce new content every day for your spiritual growth. In a quiet Buddhist monastery, surrounded by lush gardens and ancient trees, the old and sagacious monk Norio gathered his disciples to talk about a topic very close to everyone's hearts. His curiosity was palpable and his eyes were fixed on Norio. They all wanted to understand more about the reasons why, when they had helped someone, things had not gone as they would have liked. Life is like a great river, and each of us is a small boat navigating this tumultuous course. Norio began in a calm voice. Often we tend to jump into that current, trying to steer other people's boats without waiting to be asked. To make the metaphor he had just used understand, Norio shared a story passed down through the centuries. He spoke of a young monk eager to help a companion in difficulty without being asked. The monk's intervention, although well-intentioned, caused a succession of unexpected events, creating an intricate labyrinth of challenges, even dramatic, for both. You should know, Norio continued, that suffering is a necessary lesson in our spiritual growth. Each individual, like a jewel, is shaped by the pressures of life and the challenges they face. But when we intervene without being called, we rob them of the opportunity to learn, grow, and train. To further clarify his lesson, Norio spoke of two friends, Shoin and Masu, who had shared joys and sorrows since their school days. One day, Shoin heard about the financial problems Masu had found himself in and decided to secretly help him by paying off some debts that his friend couldn't pay. His intentions, said the master, were naturally good. However, Shoin's gesture had unexpected and disastrous consequences. Masu, although grateful to his friend for the unsolicited help, was deprived of the opportunity to resolve the situation in his own way. Additionally, he noted that Shoin had discovered some details about his personal life that he would have preferred to keep confidential. On the one hand, this led Masu to feel an emotional detachment from his friend. On the other hand, Shoin began to feel a growing strain on the friendship. He felt that his act of kindness had not produced the relief he had hoped for, but had instead generated a sense of shame and a change in the dynamic of the friendship itself. In short, unsolicited help had created discord and confusion, demonstrating how, in life, even good deeds can have unexpected consequences. What we often don't understand is that each individual is at the mercy of their own karma, Norio explained, and every action we take, good or bad, comes back to us like an echo. When we help without being asked to do so, we upset the delicate balance of another person's karma and paradoxically harm our own as well. The old monk told other stories, such as that of a young man who, eager to solve the problems of a dear friend without her having asked him, found himself involved in a series of endless difficulties and misadventures. If you enter a labyrinth that is not yours but someone else's without being asked, Norio continued, you could set off a chain reaction of events, creating an intricate web of karmic connections. And your gesture of friendship no matter how absurd it may seem, could end up doing more harm to the friend in question and to yourself. Imagine wanting to cure someone without asking them if they are willing to give up the things that made them sick. Norio said, "Suffering is often caused by past actions, and our intervention could alter the natural course of learning that the individual should ultimately experience." Norio then went on to talk about Buddha's teachings, highlighting how even he himself had resisted the temptation to intervene without request. Buddha, the monk explained, had understood the sacredness of the individual learning process and how the karma of each being must be respected. "Suffering is a very severe but precious teacher," Norio continued, using other everyday examples to better illustrate the concept. He spoke of the many moments when, seeing a friend or family member in difficulty, empathy pushed him to offer help, and how instead, Buddha taught the wisdom of waiting for the person themselves to ask for help. Suffering is almost always the result of past actions, and karma is the supreme law that governs the universe, Norio said. When we intervene unsolicited, we enter a karmic vortex that can drag us into other people's problems, with unpredictable consequences for both of us. Remember, suffering is like a teacher who guides us along the path of spiritual growth, said Norio. To interfere with this process is to deprive others of the wisdom that only suffering itself can teach. Norio told other stories about daily life at the monastery, showing how the monks applied these teachings in daily practice. "Dozens of monks I have trained," he added, "became wiser and more self-confident men precisely because I avoided intervening directly in their problems. By resisting the temptation to intervene to solve certain problems, I allowed them to face their own challenges and learn the lessons that karma had in store for them." Every action we take is like throwing a stone into a pond, Norio said, using a metaphor to clarify the concept. The ripples spread and return to us. When we help without asking, we not only influence the karma of others, but we create ripples that can impact our own lives. In conclusion, what do we understand from this story, and how can you help us? The moral we can draw from this story is a reminder of the wisdom of discerning when to reach out and when to wait. Karma, like an unbroken river, carries our actions with it, and the way we offer our help can alter the very structure of destiny. Before reaching out to help someone, we must reflect on what they really need, Norio admonished. Not everyone seeks advice. Sometimes they just need a listening ear and an understanding heart. Therefore, let us always remember to respect the sacredness of the individual path of each human being. Help should never be an impulsive act, but rather a conscious gesture, respectful of free will, and the path of personal and spiritual growth of others and ourselves. Life is an intricate web of lessons and opportunities for growth. When we offer our help without being called, we can deprive others of the precious opportunity to learn about themselves. Wisdom lies in recognizing that sometimes the best lesson is the one learned through one's own effort and experience. Therefore, let our help be a beacon of light, offered when requested with awareness and respect, rather than a chain of unexpected events. How do you recognize bad people? How do we understand which individuals to remove from our lives? Every day we deal with individuals of all kinds, and we often find ourselves feeling bad because some of them are toxic people who pollute us with their negativity. The Zen story you are about to listen to will reveal the 9 signs through which you can identify the people who can undermine your personal growth. So make yourself comfortable and stay until the end, so you will have the information you need to defend your emotional balance and your inner peace. In a quiet Buddhist monastery located in a remote region of Japan lived the elderly and wise monk Hogai. A young woman named Chiara eager to find answers to the anxieties that pervaded her due to some toxic relationships, approached the master with respect. Hogai, it is said that you know the secret to recognizing bad people and protecting inner peace. Please teach me, the young woman asked, with a palpable desire to learn as much as possible from the monk's wisdom. Hogai, with his typical calm, replied, "Of course, my dear. If you have the patience to listen to me, I will tell you about the signs you need to pay attention to understand who is in front of you. First, however, let me make an important premise. The people who, for simplicity's sake, we define as bad do not necessarily have to be monsters. They are bad or toxic in the sense that, with their behaviors and the energies they emanate, they can undermine our serenity and mental well-being. However, before distancing them from us, we must try to understand the reasons that led them to be as they are. It was often the pain and trials they had to face that made them dry, annoying, and even harmful. So, dear Chiara, before pushing someone away from you, ask yourself, why does she behave like this? Is he really a bad person, or is there something that makes him that way? And can I do something to prevent it from continuing to pollute my emotions? Only after you have given yourself an answer, decide whether, to preserve your mental health, push those people away. Chiara reflected on Hogai's words and was moved because she understood the enormous empathy behind them. If a person who revolves around us can harm us, we must push him away only after making sure that we cannot do anything. Now that we've cleared that up, Master continued, let's start by looking at the first sign you need to watch out for: constant manipulation. Imagine a person who, with devious skill, distorts reality to get what he wants. It could be a colleague who uses deception to advance their career. For example, when faced with a possible promotion, he begins to manipulate you by telling you that some superiors speak badly of you and suggests that you accept a job offer from another company. You may think he's doing it for your own good, but his intent is actually to get you promoted. The young woman listened attentively, fascinated by the monk's wisdom, and thought about a very similar experience she had had a year earlier. The second sign is a lack of genuine empathy. Hogai continued, think of someone who shows indifference to your feelings or experiences, who only seems interested when it benefits them. This behavior can profoundly undermine the quality of personal relationships because you instinctively feel that that person doesn't really care about your fate. He only shows empathy when he has to ask for something in return. Continuing, Hovey described the third sign, the constant creation of conflict. Imagine a person who, despite any harmonious situation, always seeks conflict, fueling arguments and discord. This attitude not only generates stress in relationships, but can also contaminate the surrounding environment, making it toxic. The fourth sign is the constant need for control. Imagine a friend or partner trying to influence your every decision, trying to direct your life according to their wishes. Every time you reveal your plan or desire, that person starts taking initiatives to try to distance you from what you want in favor of their goals. This need for control can create a toxic dynamic, undermining your autonomy and authenticity. The young woman reflected on these words, while Hogai moved on to the fifth sign, the constant lack of respect for personal limits. Think about someone who systematically ignores your privacy, invading your personal space, or not respecting your requests for solitude. This behavior can generate feelings of vulnerability and insecurity because they undermine your personal freedom. Remember, each of us has the right to some space for ourselves. Hogai arrived at the sixth sign, the frequent use of lies or half-truths. Imagine a person, said the master, building an intricate labyrinth of lies, obscuring the truth to get what he wants. The woman immediately remembered what was happening with her friend Luca, who, in order to appear more interesting, constantly exaggerated his experiences. He told exaggerated or distorted stories to arouse admiration, creating a distorted perception of himself in the eyes of others. This constant tendency to use lies, added Hogai, represents the sixth sign of ill-intentioned people, or in any case false people ready to harm you in some way. The seventh sign, Hogai explained, is the pattern of vindictive behavior. Think of someone who, at the slightest sign of criticism or rejection, actively tries to get even or punish you. Kiara immediately thought of Marta, her work colleague who, faced with her warning, had reacted by spreading false and negative news about her, with the intention of putting her in a bad light in front of the other employees. This attitude, concluded the monk, can generate a cycle of negativity and destroy the foundations of human relationships. And here we are at the eighth sign to watch out for, the constant search for attention. Imagine a friend who incessantly seeks approval through excessive attitudes or by dramatizing every situation. Kiara immediately thought of a friend from the group she went out with. Every time they were together, she dramatized her affairs by drawing everyone's attention to herself. The ninth sign to watch out for, Hogai said, is a lack of accountability. Think about those who consistently avoid taking responsibility for their actions, always blaming others. And here Chiara thought of her brother and at least 3 other people she knew. The brother who, since he was a boy, made trouble and then blamed it on his younger sister. Hogai took a moment to allow the words to settle, making Chiara fully understand what she had heard. Then, in a calm voice, he concluded, recognizing these 9 signals requires very acute perception because we often don't want to see that even people we love, in reality, more or less voluntarily, are hurting us. But if we want to preserve our inner peace, it is essential to put ourselves in a position to see these signs. So, Chiara, practice awareness and be vigilant in your relationships. The young woman thanked the master for his precious teachings and expressed all her gratitude, but Hogai felt that there was still something to say. In addition to recognizing the signs, always remember to trust your intuition. If something doesn't seem right, take time to reflect. Don't be afraid to end toxic relationships if it helps preserve your serenity and peace inner. In conclusion, what does this story teach us? That, in the complex dance of human relationships, wisdom lies in awareness. Be aware of the signs, listen to your inner voice, and wisely choose the people who will accompany your spiritual journey. Remember that your inner peace is precious, and you deserve relationships that nurture and preserve it. And before you say goodbye and meet us for the next video, remember to leave a comment with your experience and opinions. Have you ever considered the hidden power that resides in the objects around us? Did you know that every single object you come into contact with emanates and transfers energy? And are you aware that accepting objects from others can have serious repercussions on our physical and mental well-being? If these questions have made you think, you must watch this video all the way through because you will discover what are the 7 things you must not accept from anyone. So make yourself comfortable and listen to this Zen story, thanks to which you can protect your inner peace and your emotional balance. The elderly and wise monk Shozo, custodian of ancient secrets and profound spiritual truths, was revered by all for his profound understanding of life and the energy that permeates it. One day, as his disciples gathered around him in the monastery cloister, Shozo began to speak about the importance of discerning the energy surrounding objects in our lives. Have you ever thought about the energy that surrounds what we possess? Asked the wise monk, scanning the faces of his disciples for curiosity and anticipation. You should know that every object we accept from others carries with it not only a material history, but also an energetic history, a reflection of the experiences and emotions of those who touched it. The disciples listened attentively, eager to learn their master's teachings and to understand how to preserve their own serenity. There are 7 objects that we should absolutely avoid accepting from other people, Shuzo continued, as they can profoundly affect our spiritual energy and well-being. The first object Shuzo spoke about were mirrors, which on a symbolic level can be seen as subtle portals to the profound world of our soul. These objects, the monk said in a tone of reverence, are not simply reflections of our physical image, but also mirrors of our inner being. They can reflect our joys, our fears, and our deepest desires, but there is an aspect, both curious and disturbing, that concerns them. Mirrors, in fact, can also retain the energies of the people who have looked at them, thus becoming sources of both positive and negative energy. To illustrate the concept, Shuzo told the story of a young monk who, upon accepting a used mirror from an old hermit, began to experience strange visions and nightmares. That energy accumulated in the old mirror, Shuzo said, had carried with it the hermit's memories and emotions, influencing the young monk more than he had ever imagined. The second item Shuzo mentioned was salt, that simple seasoning we often take for granted. Salt, he explained calmly, has the power to absorb and retain the energies of people who touch it. When we accept salt directly from another person's hands, we may unintentionally also welcome their energies, which may be positive or negative. I remember a young cook who attended the temple many years ago. One day he accepted some salt from a traveler, and from that moment, while cooking, he began to experience a strange sensation of oppression and bad mood. That energy retained in the salt, Shuzo said, had affected the cook's mood and well-being, overshadowing the goodness of the food he prepared. The third object Shuzo talked about were used mattresses, those guardians of sleep and rest. Mattresses, he said solemnly, are not only places where we rest our bodies, but also reservoirs of energy accumulated over time. Accepting a mattress used by other people could also mean welcoming their energies, which could profoundly influence the quality of our sleep and our inner peace. To better understand the concept, Shuzo told the story of a monk who, upon accepting an old mattress from a traveler, began to experience insomnia and have disturbing dreams. That energy held in the mattress, Shuzo said, had brought with it the traveler's worries and anxieties, disturbing the monk's sleep and tranquility. The fourth object that Shuzo mentioned were wallets that belonged to someone else, or the custodians of our material possessions. Wallets, Shuzo said with a sigh, aren't just containers of money. They are also the reservoirs of the financial and emotional energies of the people who have touched them. Therefore, accepting a used wallet from another person could also mean welcoming their energies. And these could influence, negatively, our financial situation and our emotional state. A few years ago, continued the monk, a merchant approached me who, accepting an old wallet from a friend, began to experience a series of financial misfortunes and constant anxiety. That energy held in the wallet, Shuzo said, had brought with it the worries and troubles of its previous owner, thus affecting the merchant's prosperity and serenity. The old pots and pans, or the kitchen tools that keep the secrets of our meals, were the other objects the monk spoke about. Pots and pans, Shuzo said with a smile, aren't just cooking tools. They are also custodians of the culinary and emotional energies of the people who have used them. Accepting pots or pans used by other people could also mean welcoming their energies, which could influence the taste and quality of the food we prepare. Regarding this theme, Shozo told the story of a woman known and appreciated by all as an excellent cook. One day, the woman accepted an old pan from a relative. And from that day on, she began to experience a sudden decline that led her to not cook as well as she used to. That energy held in the pan, Shozo said, had carried with it the memories and emotions of its previous owner, thus influencing the flavor and goodness of her dishes. Other objects that, according to Shozo, we should never accept from others are used religious or spiritual objects, those amulets and talismans that we often carry with us for protection. These religious or spiritual objects, the elderly monk said with a serious expression, are not only symbols of faith, but also custodians of the spiritual energies of the people who have touched them. Accepting religious or spiritual objects used by other people could also mean welcoming their energies, which could influence our spiritual practice and our relationship with the divine. To clarify the concept, Shozo told the story of a devotee who, accepting an old talisman from a friend, began to experience a series of very intense spiritual visions and sensations. That energy held in the talisman, Shozo said, had carried with it the experiences and emotions of its previous owner, thus strengthening the spiritual bond and protection of the devotee. While the disciples were increasingly fascinated by their mentor's words and reflected on the times they had accepted objects from someone, the monk continued his lesson by talking about jewels and objects of sentimental value. Jewelry and objects in general that have sentimental value, Shozo said with a nostalgic tone, keep the most precious memories of our lives. They are not only ornaments, but also custodians of the emotional energies of the people who wore them, and accepting them could also mean welcoming their energies, which could influence our feelings and memories associated with those objects. Many people, added the monk, when they inherit jewels from a mother or another ancestor, begin to experience a series of very intense emotions and memories linked to their childhood. That energy held in the jewels, Shozo said, carries with it the love and affection of the loved one who is no longer with us, thus recalling the sweetest moments of his or her life. While the sun hid behind the mountains and the silence surrounding the monastery provided moments of peace, Shozo looked at the disciples with compassion and continued, remember that our energy is sacred and precious. Be aware of what you accept into your life, as each object carries with it a story and energy that can influence your inner being. The valuable lesson I would like you to take home is that we are responsible for the energies we bring into our lives. Every object, even the most seemingly harmless, can transmit vibrations that influence our physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. It is therefore important to be aware of what we accept into our lives and choose wisely what surrounds us. Whether it's a gift from a friend or a personal purchase, we take control of our energies and intentionally create a space of harmony and positivity. Sometimes we are so good and kind that we forget ourselves, allowing others to use us. We believe we must always be kind, and we end up becoming invisible. Have you ever wondered why you tend to be too kind, or because, on the contrary, there are people who are always kind and ready to help you, even when you don't ask them for help? In the Zen story you will hear soon, you will discover that there is a dark side to kindness, and if you want to live peacefully, you have to understand it in order to find the right balance. So stay until the end, because the advice you will receive will help you live your relationship with others more serenely and find your inner peace. But before continuing, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share the video. In this way, you will help us produce new content every day for your personal and spiritual growth. In a monastery nestled in the mountains of Japan lived the elderly monk Ariko, famous for his extreme wisdom. One day, a girl named Chiara approached him telling of her disappointments, Master, over time I have collected many disappointments linked to people who I thought were friends, and who instead did not prove that they were. I have always been an extremely kind person, but my concern for others has only brought me so much pain. What am I doing wrong? The master smiled kindly and began to tell an ancient story, a legend passed down by monks for generations. The story was about a village surrounded by a lush forest, a place where kindness and generosity among people were the beating heart of the community. The prosperity of that village was linked to a magnificent cherry tree. Imagine, Ariko said to Chiara, a majestic tree whose roots go deep into the earth, a symbol of the strength and generosity of the village. Legend has it that the village prospered thanks to the wisdom of the people who learned to share their resources. However, Ariko added, over time some people began to take more than they gave. Some approached the cherry tree, picking the fruits without contributing to the care of the tree, or without sharing them with the other villagers. So, little by little, the generosity of the village began to weaken, and with it, the entire community. The young Chiara listened attentively, while her eyes reflected the desire to understand the nuances of life. Ariko, with her serene gaze, continued to share the history of the village, bringing to light details and teachings that had been passed down through the centuries. The moral of this story, said the monk, is that generosity must be balanced. We must give with an open heart, but with wisdom and balance. If we give without discernment, we risk exhausting our resources and weakening our ability to be truly useful to others. Chiara was happy to listen to the master's words, and a new awareness about the concept of kindness arose in her. We might think that kindness is always good, since it helps maintain our well-being, Ariko continued. However, it is not when it crosses boundaries and leads to acting kindly in all circumstances. In this case, it is toxic kindness, a form of servility where we forget ourselves to be attentive to the needs of others. Think of a parent who gives everything of himself for the well-being of his children, to the point of putting himself in the background. Ariko's story was enriched with new details. He described, for example, how some people, in their desire to accumulate, had neglected their duty to care for the tree that had given them so much. He explained how the connection between giving and taking was a delicate balance, a harmonious flow that required attention and respect. Chiara, immersed in the story, began to reflect on her own life and the relationships she had experienced over the years. The monk, sensing his desire to learn, continued to share his wisdom. He talked about how expecting too much from others could lead to disappointment, and how setting boundaries was essential to maintaining one's emotional well-being. Remember, Ariko said, "I'm not saying that doing something for others is wrong. It is, however, focusing only on others. There are situations in which we want to please others because they ask for our help, or because we believe, sometimes mistakenly, that they need us, and we offer to make them feel good." Time passed peacefully. Ariko and Chiara delved into the nuances of generosity and wisdom. The monk spoke of how generosity, when it came from a balanced heart, could transform relationships and bring joy to both those who give and those who receive. And Chiara felt that the monk's wisdom was helping her to understand many things. The young woman learned that generosity should flow like a harmonious current fueled by deep awareness and sincere love, and that should never be forced. Ariko concluded her narration with loving advice. Chiara, try to be like the cherry tree in the village. Offer your generosity, but keep your balance. Find joy in the act of giving itself, without expecting too much in return. Remember that extreme kindness can be harmful. Sometimes, in fact, we don't leave room for others to achieve what they want, because we anticipate them. Furthermore, we focus too much on what others need, and we forget what we need. In this way, we cancel ourselves, and we begin to become invisible due to our own actions. By always being attentive to the needs of others, our own needs take a backseat. So we trample on ourselves, we take away our value, and others take advantage of it. Kiara thanked the monk with a heart full of gratitude. He felt that that story and the advice that came from it would mark a new chapter in his life. But what does this story teach us? What is his moral? That generosity is a powerful gift, but it must be cultivated with care and awareness if we want it to bring benefits both for us and for those who receive our help. Balance in giving and receiving is the key to a fulfilling and meaningful life. If we are too kind, if we are willing to do whatever is asked of us just to be considered good people, we end up no longer knowing how to say no and being exploited. In the long run, this could have repercussions on personal motivation, self-esteem, and our mental balance. So, what to do? Stop being good people. No, because there are various ways to be kind in a healthier way. You can set limits, making others understand how far they can go. Say goodbye to guilt, learning to say no when you can't or don't want to go further. Draw up a list of priorities so as to continue helping others, but without putting yourself aside. Remember, be kind, but not overly so. This could harm yourself and even those you want to help. What do you think? Write it in the comments, and let's talk about it together. Is helping others a noble gesture or a useless sacrifice? Are you among those who always worry about others? And are you among those who put aside their own needs to help those in need? If so, have you ever wondered whether your altruism, however noble, may actually hide pitfalls? What if, paradoxically, your help, instead of bringing relief, could actually harm both yourself and the person you are helping? If you stick around to the end of this Zen story, you'll discover 10 surprising ways you can hurt yourself by helping others. Because there is a dark side to helping people, and it's important for you to know it. And we will see it thanks to this Zen story steeped in Buddhist wisdom. In an era in which individualism seems to reign supreme, there are still those who believe in the power of good and the strength of compassion. But how can we discern authentic help from a useless sacrifice? How to avoid falling into the traps of excessive protection, intrusiveness, or lack of respect? Get ready for an introspective journey that will lead you to reconsider the very concept of help. Through the wisdom of an elderly Zen master and the stories of his disciples, you will discover how a gesture of altruism can turn into a boomerang if not accompanied by awareness and discernment. In an ancient Buddhist monastery located among the mountains of Japan, Master Teiko sat surrounded by his pilgrims and disciples. Today, I will talk to you about an often overlooked aspect of the spiritual path, the dark side of helping. Teiko began in a calm voice. Helping others is a noble and precious action, but if not practiced with awareness, it can hide unsuspected dangers for our mental well-being and our spiritual growth. The disciples listened attentively, attracted by the words of their mentor. They had always believed that helping others was an act of pure goodness, without shadows or contradictions. Like a rushing river, our compassion can overwhelm ourselves and those we intend to help, undermining our inner peace, continued Master Teiko. If we completely immerse ourselves in the suffering of others without maintaining the right distance, we risk being overwhelmed by darkness and losing our inner light. The disciples nodded, reflecting on their past experiences. They had helped friends through difficult times, dedicating themselves body and soul, but in the end they had felt frustrated, resentful, and lost. To help authentically, we must first cultivate our own inner peace and emotional balance, explained Master Teiko. Only from a serene source can pure and beneficial help flow. If we ourselves are troubled and unstable, we cannot bring true relief to others. The disciples began to understand that true compassion was not a blind sacrifice, but a conscious act that required inner strength and wisdom. We must learn to discern between what is truly useful and what risks harming us, continued the monk. Sometimes our desire to help can be motivated by selfish needs, such as the need to feel indispensable or to receive approval. In these cases, our help will not be genuine and may even cause harm. The disciples looked within themselves, wondering if their actions had sometimes been guided by motivations of this kind. To help purely, we must be rooted in the present, free from expectations and attachments, Master Teiko stated. We must offer our help with an open heart, without expecting anything in return, and accept that sometimes our help may not be appreciated or even rejected. True compassion is not tied to the outcome, but to the sincere intention to alleviate the suffering of others. Remember, the Master continued, that the spiritual path is a journey of personal growth. Helping others is an important aspect of this journey, but it must never dim our inner light. Let us learn to help with wisdom and compassion, supporting others without losing ourselves. Teiko's words resonated in the hearts of the disciples, illuminating their spiritual path. Now, I'm going to teach you 10 ways you can hurt yourself when you try to help someone, the monk said in a calm voice. Knowing them, he continued, will allow you not to suffer and not to make others suffer. Imposing one's will is like a river trying to divert its course, said the monk. One day, a young monk named Kenshin came across a village inhabited by poor and oppressed people. Moved by compassion, he decided to help them improve their living conditions, and with great zeal, he began to impose on them his ideas about how they should live, work, and worship. However, as time passed, Kenshin realized that his help was not welcome. The people of the village saw him as an arrogant intruder who did not understand their culture and traditions. Kenshin felt frustrated and disappointed, unable to understand why his sacrifice was not appreciated. Master Teiko explained to his disciples that Kenshin's mistake was to impose his will on others without respecting their freedom and autonomy. True help does not consist in shaping others according to our ideas, but in supporting them on their path of personal growth, he said. How can we help others without imposing our will on them? Asked a disciple. We must learn to listen carefully, understand their needs, and offer our support in a respectful and non-intrusive way, Teiko replied. Ignoring your needs is another mistake you shouldn't make, he continued. One day, a young nun named Sakura dedicated herself body and soul to caring for a sick elderly man. She spent days and nights by his side, neglecting her sleep, nutrition, and health. However, as time passed, Sakura became seriously ill. She no longer had the strength to care for the elderly man and was forced to retreat. She felt guilty and frustrated, convinced that her sacrifice had been in vain. Sakura's mistake had been to ignore her own needs to help others. True help cannot arise from blind sacrifice, but from conscious compassion that also includes self-care. How can we help others without exhausting our resources? Teiko asked his disciples. We must learn to take care of ourselves, both physically and emotionally, in order to offer lasting and authentic support. Taking responsibility for others is too great a burden, said the monk, introducing another way of helping others that brings pain and frustration. One day, a monk named Taro came across a friend who had lost his job and family. Moved by compassion, Taro decided to take care of him, offering him a place to live and food to eat. However, as time passed, Taro noticed that his friend showed no desire to improve his situation. She relied on him completely, without looking for a new job or trying to reunite with her family. Taro felt frustrated and resentful, as if his burden had become unbearable, and he realized that his help was not doing his friend any good, preventing him from taking responsibility for his life. Master Teiko explained to his disciples that Taro's mistake was to take on the responsibility of others, depriving his friend of the opportunity to grow and face his own challenges. Real help consists in encouraging autonomy and responsibility, not in replacing others. How can we help others without carrying their burden? Asked a disciple. We must learn to create a supportive environment that fosters growth and autonomy, encouraging people to take responsibility for their own choices and actions, replied the monk. Invading privacy is another way of harming oneself. It's like a flower that withers because the sun is too strong, continued the monk. One day, a nun named Hanako became very worried about a friend of hers who seemed depressed and isolated. Trying to help her, Hanako began asking her persistent questions about her private life, pressuring her to share her secrets and fears. However, as time passed, the friend felt more and more oppressed and suffocated, so he shut himself down, refusing to share his feelings and distancing himself from Hanako. Hanako felt frustrated and confused, unable to understand why her attempt to help had such a negative effect. Hanako's mistake, Takeo explained, was to invade her friend's privacy, not respecting her need for space and confidentiality. Real help is creating a safe and welcoming environment where people feel free to share what they want without pressure or expectations. So how can we help others without invading their privacy? We must learn to respect their boundaries and give them the time and space needed to process their emotions and deal with their difficulties. Another mistake not to make when we try to help others is to lose our identity. One day, a monk named Kenji met a very talented artist, but with an introverted and insecure character. Kenji, admiring his art, decided to help him become known and successful. She encouraged him to enter competitions, organize exhibitions, and promote his work. However, as time passed, Kenji realized that his support was unintentionally dimming the artist's inner light who, driven by the desire to please Kenji, began to distort his artistic style. And by conforming to public expectations and market trends, the artist's paintings had lost their originality and depth, becoming mere copies of what was required by the market. So Kenji began to feel guilty for having contributed to this decline, for having unintentionally pushed the artist to betray his true artistic essence. How can we help others without making them lose their identity? Asked a disciple. Encouraging them to express their true essence, we need to give them the space and support to explore their creativity and express themselves authentically, Takeo replied. Disrespect is another way of hurting the people we want to help and ourselves, the monk continued. One day, a woman named Yukiko came across a group of children playing on the street. Noticing their rude and disrespectful behavior, Yukiko decided to intervene. He scolded them severely, trying to teach them the rules of good behavior. However, as time passed, Yukiko noticed that the children were not receptive to her teachings. In fact, his severity distanced them even further, making them feel judged and misunderstood. Yukiko realized that her approach was not effective. True teaching cannot arise from coercion and reproach, but from respect and understanding. With a new attitude, he began to listen to the children carefully, trying to understand their reasons and emotions. And, instead of judging them, he offered to help them find creative solutions to their problems, encouraging them to express themselves in respectful and constructive ways. Over time, the children began to change their attitudes. They felt listened to and valued by Yukiko, and this pushed them to behave more responsibly and respectfully. Yukiko had learned a valuable lesson. True help does not consist in imposing one's ideas on others, but in creating an environment of respect and understanding where people can grow and learn independently. Another thing you must avoid doing is overloading the people you want to help with information, Takeo said, introducing another important aspect. One day, a monk named Hiro met a friend who was feeling overwhelmed by worries and stress. Moved by compassion, Hiro began bombarding him with advice and suggestions, trying to help him solve all his problems at once. However, as time passed, Hiro's friend felt more and more confused and overwhelmed. The amount of information and advice was excessive, and he failed to discern what was truly useful from what was just background noise. Hiro realized that his help was not effective because true support does not consist in bombarding others with information, but in helping them find the inner resources to face life's challenges. So, how can we help others without overloading them with information? We must learn to listen to their needs, understand their situation, and offer them our support in a targeted and non-oppressive way. Overprotection is also something that harms both ourselves and those we want to help, the monk continued. One day, a nun named May became very worried about her younger sister, who seemed shy and insecure. Moved by compassion, Mai decided to protect her from all dangers and difficulties, trying to solve every problem for her. However, as time passed, Mai's little sister became more and more frustrated and dependent on her sister. She did not have the opportunity to develop her skills and autonomy, and she felt unable to face life's challenges on her own. Mai realized that her help was not effective because true support does not consist in protecting others from every obstacle, but in helping them develop the strength and resilience to face life's challenges independently. With kindness and patience, Mai began to encourage her little sister to make her own decisions, face her fears, and learn from her mistakes. He offered her his support and encouragement, but he didn't stop her from having her own experiences, making her own mistakes, and growing as a person. Mai had learned a valuable lesson. True help isn't about doing things for others, but about helping them discover their inner strength and realize their full potential. So how can we help others without overprotecting them? We must learn to trust them, encourage them to make their own decisions, and face life's challenges with courage and determination. Lack of detachment is another way to hurt yourself. One day, a nun living in the monastery dedicated herself body and soul to caring for a sick friend. He spent days and nights at his side, neglecting his sleep, his nutrition, and his health until he became ill and could no longer be useful. The friend, realizing her state of suffering, asked her to take care of herself. He told her that his help was invaluable, but that it could not be effective if she was unable to recharge her energy. "Master, how can we help others without losing sight of ourselves?" asked a disciple. "We must learn to set healthy boundaries, take care of our physical and mental well-being, and recharge our energy so we can offer lasting and authentic support." But what does this story teach us? As Master Teiko explained to his disciples, helping others is a noble and compassionate act, but it must never turn into a sacrifice that harms ourselves. True support is finding a balance between giving and receiving, between compassion and wisdom. By helping others with awareness and love, we can help create a more harmonious and compassionate world for all. Are you among those who have a large number of friends, or, on the contrary, among those who have nothing? Or do you have few but good ones, as they say? Friendship is a serious thing, and today this term is used too easily. It is enough to have acquaintances to define them as friends. You realized. In this video, thanks to a Zen story that talks about personal growth, we will see what it means to not have friends and whether it is this we should worry or not. So stay until the end, because the moral of this story will make you understand many things, making you understand how to really read the term friendship. A girl named Elena, a kind and pure-hearted person, often felt sad and lonely. He looked around and saw the other inhabitants of this town with their groups of friends, laughing and sharing happy moments together. This vision caused her a feeling of emptiness and lack, since she had no people with whom to share her life. One day, while traveling through Japan, he decided to seek solace and advice from the monk Kobo, a wise hermit who lived in a small monastery on the outskirts of a town. The monk was known for his wisdom and compassion, but above all for his solitary life. That's why Alina understood that that monk would be the right person to ask for an opinion about her loneliness. "Monk Kobo," Alina said quietly, "I feel lonely, and it seems that the lack of friends is a problem. Everyone around me seems happy with their friends, and I wonder why I can't have the same joy." The monk Kobo looked at her with compassionate eyes and invited her to sit down. "Alina, friendship is truly a precious gift, but your happiness shouldn't come from how many friends you have. I would like to share with you the reasons why not having many friends, or having any at all, is not something to worry about, but can even be an advantage." The young woman, still immersed in her melancholic mood, asked Kobo to better explain the concept of having few or even no friends. And Kobo, with his wisdom born from decades of studies and reflections, began to reveal the secrets of an authentic friendship. "Dear Alina, the first thing I want to tell you is that relationships and human bonds are something very important. This means that in life, we should not measure them in terms of quantity, but rather quality. Would you rather have a large number of people with whom you can share trivial things, or, on the contrary, a very small number of people with whom to share very intense emotions and moods?" The girl, faced with these rhetorical questions, began to reflect and understand. Many of the people she saw around her were full of friends, but what was the quality of those relationships? She asked herself intimately. Kobo, happy to read in the young woman's eyes that she was beginning to see things differently, continued listing the reasons why having few friends, or none at all, should not be seen as a problem. "Having few friends," he said, "guarantees a certain degree of freedom and authenticity. In this way, it is easier to be yourself and live without restrictions or external influences. Imagine that you love a particular activity which may seem strange or uninteresting to others. If you have few or no friends, you have the freedom to pursue that passion without being judged. Remember, if you want to live a fulfilling life, you don't have to conform to what others think is cool or normal. After all, who decides what normality really is?" Elena thought about one of the things she loved most, observing the starry sky on clear nights. This interest of hers was not understood by her classmates, who made fun of her and saw her as strange. Kobo went on to explain that quantity is never synonymous with quality. Having fewer friends, he continued, allows you to focus on building deeper, more meaningful relationships. Imagine having just one friend with whom you share the joys and sorrows of life. This connection could be so deep that the person understands all your emotional nuances. This is a priceless treasure. Elena reflected on this idea, remembering an episode in which a girl she knew supported her in a difficult moment, understanding her without needing many words. And he began to understand that in life, instead of wanting to have dozens of friends around you who are not really friends, it is much better to focus on finding that person who reads and sees life like you. The monk, after giving Elena time to reflect, continued with his explanations and spoke of another reason why he preferred quality over quantity in human relationships. Human relationships, he explained, require a lot of emotional energy. Having few friends allows you to focus this energy on the people who really matter. Kobo, to enhance the idea, used a practical example. Think about how many conflicts or tensions usually occur in large groups of friends. Maintaining small relationships allows you to preserve your positive energy for those who truly support you. If you have to argue with someone, for example, to resolve a conflict, it is much better that it is a person who really matters in your life, or not. Elena found that group dynamics were often stressful, while more intimate interactions brought her joy and comfort. Kobo went on to highlight how loneliness can be an opportunity to explore oneself and grow personally. In the tranquility of your solitude, You can discover hidden passions, latent interests, or unexplored talents. You are not limited by the expectations of others, and this allows you to grow in surprising ways. So, dear Elena, my invitation is to see loneliness in another way as you have done until now. Having few but good friends allows us to more easily find moments to be alone with ourselves, and this significantly helps our spiritual and personal growth. Elena thought about how much time she could dedicate to her personal interests when she wasn't trying at all costs to be with groups of people, and how dedicating herself to herself in solitude distanced her from that search for other people's approval that did her no good. In those moments, he discovered aspects of himself that he didn't even know, and it was beautiful. Finally, Kobo emphasized that the absence of social limitations allows for greater flexibility in each of our lives. Imagine receiving a job opportunity in a faraway place. With no strings attached, you are free to embrace new adventures without having to think about how they will affect your social circle. Elena put herself in the place of those who, with less close ties, had the possibility of taking advantage of opportunities without restrictions. He met people who, thanks to this extreme autonomy, had flown far away to realize their dreams and expectations. Also, Kobo concluded, when you have few friends, but these are genuine, you can move to the other side of the world, but you will never lose them. They will remain by your side, beyond space and time. After listening attentively, the young woman understood that she had developed a new awareness about the concept of friendship. Not having many friends does not mean being alone, but being able to concentrate on one's own interiority and the search for some connections that really mattered to her. Master Kobo hugged her gently and added, "Always remember that your happiness should not depend on the number of friends you have, but on the quality of the connections you cultivate with the few you have." I have known people who say they have no friends, only to discover that in their life there was only one person, just one, who counted as 100 friends. And remember something else. People who have few friends are the most authentic and profound people I have ever met. They are people who do not settle for mediocrity. Usually, those who tend not to get along with everyone and want to have few people around them have an extraordinary inner world and truly rare human qualities. In conclusion, what is the moral of this story? That loneliness, seen from a new perspective, can be a valuable ally in the search for happiness, spiritual growth, and personal fulfillment, and therefore should not be feared. And that, to live happily, it is not necessary to have a multitude of friends. You just need to have the right ones, that is, the ones that add real value to your life. Because if you tend to be a loner, it is because you have a higher than average sensitivity. Have you ever wondered how badly spoken words can hurt, and how much destructive force can be hidden in sharp language? And again, have you ever thought about how silence can be a resource for living better and getting what we want? Thanks to the Zen story you are about to listen to, you will discover that the power of silence, according to Buddhist wisdom, allows us not only to live in peace, but also to get what we want. Because words can be light feathers that caress, or heavy stones that leave indelible marks. And in this dance between saying and keeping silent, we should ask ourselves whether silence can be the key to mitigating the destructive power of words. So stay until the end because, in addition to exploring the language of silence, in the last part of the video, we will see the 14 reasons why learning to be silent can give us a better life. But before continuing, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you will stay updated on new publications. In an ancient Japanese monastery lived the elderly monk Yosai, famous for his extreme wisdom and for having made silence a reason for living. During a lesson, The monk began to talk to his disciples about the importance of silence, taking inspiration from the ancient words of Buddha. Like a secret garden that guards our existence, Yosei began, words are seeds that can give life to flowers of joy or sting like poisonous thorns. Remember that the tongue we use is like a sharp blade, capable of cutting deeply. Then, smiling at those who listened attentively, he explained that according to Buddhist philosophy, misused words can be dangerous weapons, even if they do not inflict physical wounds. Words, Yosei pointed out, have the power to hurt emotionally, to create invisible scars on the soul. It is crucial to understand their potential, to understand how they can build, but also destroy. When we speak words with kindness and wisdom at the right time, we can open doors to success. Conversely, if we speak rudely or at inappropriate times, we can wreak havoc on the fabric of our lives. Listen to this story, said Yosei. In a city vibrant with life, there was a famous showman known for his eloquence. Every square, every theater was his stage, and his speaking was like a spell that captured everyone's attention. The showman, however, was tormented by his inability to find his inner peace. So one day, when he heard about a hermit who lived in an isolated mountain, he decided to go and visit him to see if he could help him. Respectfully, the showman asked the sage to help him find inner peace by explaining his frustration. The wise man, elderly and sagacious, proposed an experiment to remain silent for 15 days. The showman accepted the sage's invitation, abstaining from the many words that had characterized his existence, and albeit with difficulty, he immersed himself in silence with determination. Over the next few days, abstaining from his usual flow of words, he began to sense a change. The inner frenzy that had obsessed him eased, and as time passed, he discovered a serenity he had never experienced before. At the end of the period of silence, the showman returned to the sage with a transformed look. With bright eyes, he recognized the peace he had found in the silence. The sage, looking into his eyes, said, "Silence has the power to calm the storm within you. By using fewer words, you have discovered an inner richness that no number of performances could ever match." The monk Yosei, having finished the story, highlighted the central message. Silence is a hidden treasure that can resolve inner restlessness. Words can be precious, but silence sometimes is the elixir that heals invisible wounds of the soul. While the disciples, fascinated by the story, commented among themselves on what they had just heard, Yosei said to them, "Friends, now I will tell you about the 14 reasons why silence is so precious." The first reason, Yosei underlined, is the ability of silence to promote effective listening. My experience has taught me that silence allows us not only to hear the words of others, but to grasp the implicit meaning behind expressions and gestures. Like the light wind that whispers among the leaves, silence allows us to perceive the most delicate nuances of human communications, and this avoids misunderstandings, making interactions healthier. The second reason why to embrace silence, according to the monk, concerns self-awareness. In a world full of noise and distractions, he added, carving out moments of silence to reflect on your life is crucial. Think of silence as a serene pool in which the mind can clearly contemplate its existence, as clear waters reflect the sky without distortion.
And what do you think about silence? And what relationship do you have with people who talk a lot? Write it in the comments and let's compare. Also, if you are enjoying the video, please like and share it. This way you will help us produce new content every day for your spiritual growth.
The third reason, according to Yosei, is linked to the practice of patience. Just as the gardener waits patiently for flowers to bloom, so silence teaches us to appreciate the calm that comes from patience, the monk stated. In moments of frustration, silence becomes fertile ground in which to cultivate patience, allowing challenges to bloom like flowers after a regenerating rain. Silence promotes reflection and deep understanding, Yosei continued. Like the concentric circle that is created on water when a stone falls, silence allows us to investigate our thoughts and emotions in depth. Through the practice of silent reflection, an inner space is created where the mind can explore without superficial distractions. This allows us to develop more ideas, find solutions, know what to say intelligently. The fifth reason why silence is a resource, Yosei emphasized, is linked to creativity and innovation. In silence, the mind is like an unexplored garden that reveals its deepest secrets. Similarly to nature, which, in its silence, hides creative processes that lead to the birth of new forms of life, the mind, immersed in silence, can generate innovative ideas and unexpected connections. The sixth reason, according to Yosei, is the better understanding of nonverbal communication. Just as the wind carries the scent of flowers, silence allows us to perceive the nonverbal messages of others, explained the monk. In practicing silence, we learn to decipher body language and facial expressions, thus enriching human interactions. The things we can understand about others when we remain silent are innumerable. The seventh reason that the master spoke of is related to mental discipline. Silence is a teacher who teaches the virtue of patience and control, the monk stated. Just as the wind adapts to the characteristics of the landscape without ever getting lost, but insinuating itself between the mountains and continuing its journey, those who practice silence develop the ability to respond thoughtfully to others and to the challenges of life. Yosei went on to talk about the eighth reason. In silence, we are immersed in the present moment, like a leaf floating on a river without resisting the current, the monk stated. This immersion allows us to live authentically, appreciating each experience without judgment or distraction. The ninth reason, according to Yosei, is the promotion of empathy through silence. Silence allows us to connect deeply with others, the monk said. Through silence, our ability to understand other people's emotions develops, nurturing stronger and more lasting bonds. Another reason to cultivate silence, said the monk, has to do with mental and emotional well-being. In silence, in fact, we find an interior calm that is like a safe refuge from the storm of life. Far from the constant noise and distractions to which we are subjected in today's society, silence offers an oasis of peace in which to rediscover oneself and find answers to the most complex questions. Yosei, smiling at his disciples, continued with the 11th reason he had included in his list. Silence makes us more aware of the words we speak, he said. The practice of silence refines the quality of communication, encouraging clearer and more effective dialogues. In practice, it allows us to think carefully about the words we decide to use. When we practice silence, Yosei continued, we create space for gratitude. Like a gardener grateful for the rain that embraces his field, silence allows us to appreciate the gifts of life. The practice of silence makes us aware of the blessings that surround us, cultivating an attitude of gratitude. Yosei also spoke about how silence promotes the creation and maintenance of healthy and deep relationships. In silence, we connect without the need for superfluous words, the monk stated. In this way, we create spaces of authentic connection and establish meaningful and lasting relationships based on mutual understanding and silent sharing. The most important thing about silence, Yosei added, is that it serves as a portal to inner wisdom. Like a secret door into the heart of the soul, silence invites us to explore our inner world without external interference. And in this quiet space, we can access profound insights, illuminating the path to understanding the mysteries of life and our spiritual path. The moral of this story lies in recognizing the value of silence in critical moments. Let us remember that silence, understood as a precious gift, offers us the possibility of truly listening and understanding the transformative power of reflection. Therefore, let us learn to weigh words wisely and to combine them with sweetness. In this balance, we will find a key to building more harmonious relationships and to cultivating the inner peace that comes from the language of silence. Have you ever had the impression that the people around you are just there to use you? Discovering that someone you interact with every day is not around you out of affection, but only out of convenience, hurts a lot. However, it is important to find out so that you can defend yourself and behave accordingly. And in the Zen story you're about to hear, you'll learn about 10 teachings to help you find out if they're using you. So make yourself comfortable and stay until the end, because we assure you that when you have listened to these 10 teachings and the final moral of the story, you will know exactly how to defend your inner peace from certain people. But before continuing, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share the video. Thanks to these small gestures, you will help us produce new, valuable content every day for your spiritual growth. In a quiet monastery located in the mountains of Japan, the elderly and wise monk Chomi decided to give a lesson on the signs that indicate the selfish intentions of those who approach us. His disciples, increasingly hungry for knowledge, gathered around him, eager to draw new insights for personal growth from Buddhist wisdom. Wisdom lies in the ability to read the teachings that the world and the people around us present to us, said the monk. The first lesson is the smile. A sincere smile is like a ray of sunshine that warms the heart. But when the smile is forced, and the eyes of the smiler do not participate in the joy, then it is a sign of a hidden intention. Chomi, he pointed to the monastery garden where the flowers bloomed in all their beauty. Remember that, just as a flower opens to the light, so a sincere person opens to the truth. But if you notice a false smile, be aware that there is deception behind it. A young disciple asked, "But how can we recognize a fake smile? How can we be sure that it is fake?" Chomi responded wisely, "Look at the eyes. The eyes are the mirror of the soul. If they do not participate in the smile, if they remain cold and distant, then there is a void between the words and the heart. Imagine meeting an old friend who, although smiling, seems a little distant. Notice that his smile lacks the usual brightness in his eyes. Then you try to engage him in a meaningful conversation, but his expression remains static, and the smile disappears almost immediately after it appears. Remember that an empty smile may be accompanied by stiff facial movements, as if the person is exhibiting an emotion rather than experiencing it. Therefore, if a smile is not very bright and does not last long, the facial movements are rigid, and the eyes do not seem to follow the smile itself, it means that that person is acting. Walking in the gardens together with his disciples, the monk pointed to a small bird hovering in the sky. The second signal is the lightness of the soul. A sincere person is like a free bird in the sky without weights or chains holding him back. But those who have selfish intentions, those who have ulterior motives, are like a caged bird, only trying to take advantage. As the disciples contemplated the bird dancing in the air, Chomi added, "People who have ulterior motives, therefore a soul that is anything but light, you identify because their behavior and words are forced." The third teaching through which to understand if a person wants to use us is awareness, continued the Master. If you perceive that someone wants to trap you, using you for his own gain, be aware of your state. Only with awareness will you be able to open the cage and free your soul. Continuing his walk along the monastery gardens, Chomi pointed to the river water flowing relentlessly. The fourth signal is fluidity, he said. Sincere relationships flow like river water, unhindered. But if you notice obstacles, resistance, or manipulation, it is a sign that someone is trying to control the flow of your life. Imagine you are talking to an acquaintance, and you notice that each of your questions receives short and in-depth answers. Any attempt to take the conversation to a deeper level is rejected or ignored. Additionally, the person constantly seems distracted, looking away or checking their phone during the conversation. Or again, he shows nervousness, impatience, as if he wanted to be elsewhere. One disciple asked, "And if we find ourselves being manipulated, what can we do to preserve our emotional well-being?" Chomi, with his deep gaze, responded with the fifth signal, courage. Have the courage to resist manipulation. Like a rock that challenges the currents of the river, stand firm in your truth. Each of us is a unique person, and you must protect this uniqueness. So when someone tries to manipulate you, remember to anchor yourself to your deepest authenticity. The monk, satisfied to see the strong interest in his words, pointed to the starry sky that opened above them. The sixth signal is constancy, authentic presence, he added. Those who have sincere intentions are like the stars in the sky, always present even in the darkest nights. But he who is only interested in his own gain is like a shooting star, which shines only for an instant before disappearing. A young disciple asked, "But how can we be sure of someone's steadfastness? Sometimes a person might drift away momentarily, but that doesn't make him false." Chomi, with his usual wisdom, replied, "To understand if a person is a constant presence in your life, you must use the seventh teaching that I have prepared for you, observation. Observe people's behavior over time and remember that repeated actions are a reflection of a person's true character." Imagine sharing a personal story with someone. An authentically present person will be completely immersed in your narrative, maintaining eye contact, responding with appropriate facial expressions, and demonstrating active listening. On the other hand, a person who lacks authentic presence may appear distracted, avoid eye contact, and respond mechanically, in monosyllables, showing a superficial connection. As they walked beneath the monastery's centuries-old trees, Chomi pointed to the deep roots that intertwined with the earth and said, "The eighth sign is depth." Authentic relationships have deep roots, like trees that draw from the earth all the nutrients they need to grow healthy. But those who are only interested in the surface, those who do not want to build a relationship of true affection with you, are like grass that withers in the first wind. Imagine two friends facing a difficult period. The one with deep roots in the relationship will be there actively, offering practical and emotional support. He will share similar personal experiences, creating a stronger bond. On the other hand, a friend with shallow roots may show momentary interest, but will lack long-term commitment, revealing a less solid connection. A disciple asked, "What if we find that someone does not have deep roots? What if we see that someone behaves towards us like the grass he spoke of?" Chomi responded by introducing the ninth teaching, wisdom. Understand the true depth of your relationships and act wisely. If someone shows that they don't have or don't want to have deep roots, let them go without regrets. The monk pointed to a lighthouse far away on the coast and spoke about the 10th teaching, guidance. A sincere person is like a lighthouse that lights the way. But if you find that someone is only guiding you towards the rocks, then it's time to change course. But what is the moral of this story, and what does it teach us? Before watching it, if you liked the video, don't forget to support the channel with a super thanks. In this way, we'll be able to produce new valuable content for you. And now we come to the moral of the story. Every season has its secrets, and so it is in the life of each of us, said the monk. We have explored together the signs that indicate who is close to us only to benefit ourselves. Remember, life is like a garden. It flourishes with sincere relationships, but it can also harbor weeds that try to stifle the beauty. We have learned to recognize these weeds, the signs that reveal hidden intentions. Now that you know these secrets, you must maintain your wisdom. Don't reject anyone who approaches you, but be aware. Be like the wise gardener who cultivates carefully, eliminating weeds without ever ceasing to nourish what is authentic. A young disciple raised his hand and asked, "But how can we truly distinguish those who are sincere from those who are false?" And Chomi, smiling, replied, "The answer is within you. Listen to your heart with serenity. Sincerity sounds like a harmonious melody, while deception is a discordant note. Don't be afraid to walk away from those who don't bring peace and mental well-being to your inner garden." How many times have you talked too much about yourself with someone, and how many times has this left you feeling empty? And again, how many times have you discovered that the things you told ruined your plans or were used to hurt you? Nowadays, there is a lot of talk about how to preserve privacy, but in the end, it is we ourselves who annihilate our private sphere, telling details of our lives that should remain locked in a safe like precious stones. In this video, thanks to the Zen story you are about to hear, you will learn 10 things that you should not tell anyone if you want to preserve not so much your privacy, but your inner peace. So stay until the end, because the information you will have will allow you, if you really want it, to save yourself from toxic people and negative situations that can influence your destiny. In a Buddhist monastery, located in a remote mountainous region of Japan, the wise monk Koshiro gathered a group of disciples to teach them the importance of not talking too much about themselves to others. How much attention do we pay to protecting our private sphere? Koshiro asked rhetorically, whose penetrating and apparently stern gaze searched the eyes of his listeners. Do we strive to protect the beauty of our interiority, or do we often break down the walls that surround and protect our secret garden? Today, I will tell you 10 things that, according to Buddhist wisdom and common sense, you should never tell anyone, the monk said. But first, let me make an important premise. Many people are unable to contain the unstoppable flow of words that flow through them. Too often, out of a need to vent or find someone who will show empathy in others, they give in to providing unsolicited information. And in this way, they reveal details about important and delicate topics in their lives, relying on a trust that only very few deserve. Remember that sharing too much of yourself with others often leads to envy, jealousy, and frustration, because not everyone is willing to celebrate the success of others, nor to sincerely rejoice in their happiness, in the goals they have achieved. In certain circumstances, confessing something extremely personal to a person who is not particularly intimate can leave a feeling of emptiness, of exposure, almost of discomfort. Likewise, telling too much about yourself can lead to numerous and sometimes difficult criticisms. Reflecting on these dynamics invites us to carefully consider the words we choose to share. Each communication, each word emitted from our mouth, transmits judgments and opinions that reveal the deepest aspects of our personality. Let us always remember to develop some self-criticism so that we reflect carefully on the speed with which our tongue moves in relation to our thoughts. Perhaps if we were more aware of the power of our words in shaping our identity, we would be more cautious about letting our tongue run wild without proper discernment. After this intense introduction, The disciples who came to listen to Koshiro remained silent, shocked by the wisdom they had just heard. And when Master began to list the 10 things they should not talk about with anyone, they began to reflect on all the times they had talked too much about themselves. Never tell your plans and goals, Koshiro urged, introducing the first point. Don't do this because talking ahead of time about what we want to achieve can weaken the strength of the seeds we have planted, making them vulnerable to outside influences. To better understand the concept, the monk told the story of a promising businessman who, by prematurely telling the details of his projects, led some of his competitors to copy him, frustrating his efforts. What happens when we tell our personal facts to others? Koshiro asked, inviting the disciples to reflect on the second point he would speak about. We run the risk of breaking the inner balance, that delicate harmony formed by ideas, images, sensations, and projects in constant change. Do not talk about your private life, the monk warned. The words you speak about the most intimate details of your existence can create envy, jealousy, gossip, and external judgments that will end up weakening your energy. The third thing you should not talk about with anyone is the charity we do. Never tell others about your acts of charity, Koshiro decisively stressed, explaining how humility in giving for the common good can be lost in pride if it is revealed too soon. I know very good people who, having revealed their charitable gestures without preserving the purity of their altruism, ended up being misunderstood or criticized. Another thing you absolutely should not talk to anyone about, Koshiro continued, is money issues. Remember that your financial situation can be overwhelmed by the greed or envy of others. I remember a friend who, after revealing his financial successes, had to deal with the negative attitudes of many people, not to mention someone's attempts to ruin what he had built. Never bragging about your acts of heroism was another point Koshiro focused on, highlighting how personal glory can obscure the true meaning of an altruistic act. A few years ago, a monk at the monastery saved the life of a young pilgrim, Koshiro said. The media, upon learning of the event, attempted to interview him, but he avoided doing so and preserved his modesty, embodying the true spirit of heroism. Do not talk about your spiritual path and your religious ideas, the monk continued, explaining how spirituality can be misunderstood or ridiculed if exposed recklessly. If you want your soul to flourish and inner peace to be part of your days, he added, make sure this sphere of your life remains yours alone. The seventh thing you should not talk about with anyone, according to the master, is family problems. Don't talk about your family problems, Koshiro said, emphasizing that domestic matters are fragile and need respect. If you talk about the most intimate matters of your family, it is almost certain that you will end up regretting it, because you will receive unwanted judgments and you will put into the mouths of inappropriate people details that do not concern only you. Never talk about others except in their presence, the monk admonished, adding another item to his list of things not to say. Talking about someone who is not present means disrespecting that person, exposing them to public ridicule. Also remember, anyone who talks about someone who is not present will do the same to you. And would you like someone to tell your secrets to people who don't deserve your trust? Another thing you should never talk about with others, according to the old monk, are your political ideas. My dears, Koshiro said, unless you are involved in politics, do not trust your political beliefs to anyone. In fact, differences of opinion can undermine peace within the community in which we live, especially when we talk about politics. I know people who, by clashing over political issues, have ruined decades-long friendships. While the disciples continued to listen to the lesson with great attention, the wise teacher continued, "Never talk about your problems or weaknesses, since informing others of your vulnerability is equivalent to forming an army ready to attack you at the first opportunity." I've known friends who, after talking to the wrong people about their weaknesses, found themselves stabbed in the back at the first misunderstanding. You know that phrase we often hear in movies. Koshiro asked, "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court." Here, he added, "Avoid revealing your secrets and your weaknesses, because someone, sooner or later, could use them to do you a lot of harm." In the silence of the monastery, illuminated by the soft light of candles, the disciples reflected deeply on the precious lessons of the wise monk Koshiro. But what does this journey teach us and transmit to us through the awareness of talking too much about oneself? That communication and the use we make of it is extremely important in our lives. Our language, in fact, can shape our internal and external reality, and we must always remember that every word we speak is like a seed thrown on another's soil. If we talk too much about ourselves, we run the risk of seeing our inner garden invaded by external influences, losing the delicate beauty of our unique essence. From this story, we also learn that silence is not empty, but rather a fertile space where deep thoughts and feelings can germinate. A place where we can protect the things and people we care about, as well as ourselves. The secret, therefore, is to learn to guard the treasure of our being without dissolving it too soon in words. Silence is not just the lack of sounds, but a refuge where words take shape with wisdom, where meaning is cultivated before being shared. The moral that we can draw from this teaching is that the value of confidentiality and of speaking reflectively lies in the possibility of cultivating sincere and deep relationships. Not sharing every detail of our lives allows us to protect trust and sensitivity in human interactions. Remember that your life is a secret garden, and choosing which flowers to show the world is an act of deep consciousness. Let us then learn the art of confidentiality, to know the power of our words, and to use silence as a treasure. Let your inner garden bloom delicately, because in that silence you will find the strength and wisdom that only privacy can offer.